Good afternoon. I'm Sandra Vanoy, Acting Dean of the Walker College of Business. Welcome to this special co-presentation of Business for Good and the Global Opportunities Conference, co-supported by the Walker College and our Sustainable Development Solutions Network, the Department of Economics, the Beaver College of Health Sciences, and Appalachian's Office of Sustainability. Today is a special day for us, and I'm looking forward to hearing from Professor Jeffrey Sachs shortly. In the Walker College, we pride ourselves in delivering transformational educational experiences and inspiring students to become ethical and innovative, engaged business leaders. As we look to the future, I'm hopeful we will all be together in person for the next academic year, and that we will be united in common goals like sustainability. With sustainable development goals at the core of our teaching and learning, our college's sustainable development strategy is key to moving forward. We are fortunate that Professor Sachs has accepted our invitation to be here today because, as one of the most influential policy and thought leaders across complex domains like health and human well-being and global cooperation, Professor Sachs is helping us move forward too. It is now my pleasure to welcome Dr. Martin Mesner, Associate Dean for Global and Civic Engagement, to note our pride in recognizing Professor Sachs' outstanding efforts. Marty.
Thank you, Dean Vanoy. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce a speaker whose work I have admired all my professional life. Professor Jeffrey Sachs is among the finest economists of our time. And what distinguishes Professor Sachs from most other economists is his explicit infusing of compassion, kindness, cooperation in a discipline that overwhelmingly emphasizes efficiency. What also distinguishes Professor Sachs is the wide array of problems he has sought to address, actually solve, in numerous parts of the world. Professor Sachs, in recognition of your bold efforts to make the world healthy, civil, equitable, and sustainable, it is our honor to present to you our Global Visionary Award. We truly wish that this event was happening in person, but we know that your words, even from a distance, will inspire all of us to ponder the pressing challenge of reuniting the United States. We offer you this award in gratefulness for what you have achieved. At the end of the lecture, Dr. Dave McAvoy, the chair of our economics department, will facilitate a time of questions and answers. Dr. Sachs, the floor is yours.
Dean Mesner, Dean Vanoy, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for this wonderful award. I have the virtual copy here, and it's beautiful and very meaningful for me. I'm so grateful to be a part of your wonderful community of Appalachian State University and the Walker College of Business. It's very moving. I hope that I hope you will invite me in person, even after I talk, because I would so much like to be together with you and to see the beautiful campus and the beautiful region that you're in. So I'm looking forward to that. And thank you for having this event online, as it has to be for the moment, but we are going to get past COVID-19, and we're going to find our way not only to end a pandemic which has created so much harm, but actually to get back to build a better America in the coming years. I'm quite confident about that. And I think our huge challenge, in addition to confronting this immediate scourge, is to build a reunited United States. That's what I want to speak about today. Your commitment at Walker College and Appalachian State University to sustainable development, I think, is key to this. In my view, sustainable development as a concept, as a philosophy, as a practical approach to business life and politics and civic engagement shows us the way forward to a united states and a united society. we have been deeply divided for reasons that I want to discuss, but I think sustainable development is the way that we can come together. And let me at the outset also thank you for joining the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network, not only joining, being an important member of this global network. This is now a universe of more than 1,500 institutions of higher learning in all parts of the world, where we in the academic setting are striving to make a contribution to our societies within our countries and our regions, and also globally, because all of the challenges that we confront, whether it is COVID-19 or climate change or the inequalities in our society, need global attention as well as national and local efforts. So I'm so thankful that you're part of this global network. I'm going to try to share my screen, and if I can, no, that's not, you never know where you're going on the shared screen until you get there. Now, here it is, a PowerPoint. And this will, I hope, enable me to give some thoughts about this question of reuniting the United States. Why do I talk in these terms? I think it's obvious. If every piece of legislation these days is a 50-50 vote, if we can't seem to see eye to eye on how to move forward, if we all feel this sense of our society being paralyzed and divided, we're going to remain in deepening crisis in the United States. We are deeply divided right now. I think there's no doubt about it. And we need to find a way forward. Now, in economics, we have a concept, a technical concept of jargon. We sometimes call it a Pareto improvement, named after an Italian social scientist at the beginning of the 20th century, Vilfredo Pareto. A Pareto improvement is a change of situation in which everybody is made better off. This is certainly, I think, the path to reuniting the United States, is to find the path in which our life conditions, our health and our well-being, our capacity as individuals and families and regions to thrive is something that is shared across society. So my goal is to help to identify the reasons why we have come apart and the ways that we can find a Pareto improvement, if you will, in which all parts of the country can benefit and advance through a shared strategy. I think that putting sustainable development at the center of that strategy is key, because we face profound challenges that sustainable development is really designed and created to address. When we study economics, our founding text is the 1776 book, The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. And Adam Smith talked about how nations can gain wealth. And he did a very, very good job of it, by the way. It's a brilliant book with brilliant insights that has insights that last till today. Many ideas about physical geography and economy and scale and scope of the marketplace that resonate in cutting edge research. But his goal was primarily about the wealth of nations. And what we have come to understand is that the wealth of nations does not sum up the well-being of nations, and does not sum up our aspirations as individuals and as a society. We need something more than wealth, because wealth can be miserably, inequitably distributed. Maldistribution and high inequality of wealth and income are plaguing our society today, as has been true through much of American history. There's nothing in the market forces that Adam Smith propounded that ensures social inclusion, social justice, and a reasonable distribution of income and wealth. There's also nothing in the economics that Adam Smith propounded by itself without a society-wide framework that ensures environmental sustainability. And we are confronting globally 4 potentially catastrophic environmental threats. One of them we're living through dramatically right now: zoonotic diseases. That is, new emerging pathogens that transfer from animal populations to human populations, as SARS-CoV-2 did, this new virus that causes COVID-19. Today, the WHO working group on the origin of this pandemic released a report. Its preliminary guess is that, without absolute certainty, that this was a natural zoonotic event, a natural transmission of this virus from a bat population to humans, perhaps through an intermediate mammal host, that has led to a worldwide catastrophe. Now we're seeing more and more of those emerging diseases because we're disturbing nature in more and more intensive ways, in very dangerous ways. The second of these 4 global environmental catastrophes is, of course, climate change, something that is well understood to North Carolina, and it's something that is being felt everywhere. The eastern seaboard of the United States is experiencing more and more high-intensity hurricanes, to be expected as the Caribbean warms as part of the global warming process. We're experiencing more and more billion-dollar or more catastrophes in the United States: mega forest fires, droughts, heat waves, intense storms. And this kind of environmental derangement, these hydrometeorological shocks, are being experienced all over the world. In my work at the United Nations, there's not a day that passes without my attention being drawn to a new climate shock someplace. 2020 was tied for the warmest year on record. Alarming enough, but even more alarming because the Pacific Ocean was in a La Nina state, which usually cools the planet. And so if we detrend from the so-called ENSO oscillation, the El Nino La Nina fluctuation, 2020 broke all records. And we're on a dangerous path of warming, which for some reason politicians in the United States have chosen to neglect now for decades, and it's getting worse. The third of these 4 environmental crises is the deforestation and land degradation that is part of the American experience, but of course is happening in the Amazon, in the Congo Basin, in the Indonesian archipelago, and in many places in the world. We're losing habitat, we're losing species, we're losing biodiversity. Not only a moral catastrophe, but a very practical one, as whole classes of pollinators and other classes of animal species and plant species are threatened by extinction, or threatened by invasive species of others that are artificially introduced into new environments. And the fourth of these environmental catastrophes is the massive air, water, soil, and ocean pollution that we're experiencing. If you can imagine, the United States can't even keep safe water supplies for our cities now. So our infrastructure is so broken down. Safe water is in stress. But everywhere we turn worldwide, the ocean environment is highly polluted. Microplastics abound in all of the fisheries of the world now. The air pollution worldwide, often related to fossil fuel use, kills an estimated 5 to 10 million people a year in premature mortality. So Adam Smith knew a lot, but he did not give us the text of how to achieve sustainable development, how to achieve holistic well-being, as opposed to a real objective, but a limited one of simply economic progress. Our aim is therefore prosperity, social justice, and environmental sustainability. And in the United States, we need all of these to be in the forefront of our policy goals, because American societies become more unequal than ever before in our history, perhaps rivaling the Gilded Age of 130 years ago, but probably exceeding it in income and wealth inequality. Our environmental catastrophes are, of course, unprecedented, and America is a major contributor as well to the ongoing global environmental catastrophes. So what is a path to sustainable development for our country? Well, it starts with the fact that we live in a knowledge age. This is the good news. Any week, the scientific and technological advances are breathtaking. The pace of knowledge increase is staggeringly rapid and giving us tools to address our challenges that are of unprecedented power if we use them properly. After all, with this new pandemic, we had a vaccine in complete historic record time of 1 year. That is because of the power of modern virology and modern biotechnology, modern genomics that enabled sophisticated, unprecedentedly powerful vaccine platforms such as the mRNA vaccines of Pfizer and Moderna to be developed in such a short period of time. Well, well-being and thriving in our society depend on all parts of our country being knowledge-based hubs for local economic development, for innovation, for development of new digital technologies, and for development of new green technologies. And of course, Appalachian State University and the other great universities of North Carolina and universities all over the United States have a unique role to play as hubs of this new knowledge-based economy. The second major challenge an opportunity that we have is caregiving. The good news about modern technologies is that the machines can do a lot of the work for us. So we are going to have mines that are run by autonomous vehicles. We have precision agriculture that enables 1% of our population to feed 100% of Americans. Our assembly lines these days are automated with highly sophisticated robots. But what all of these machines cannot do is give human care. And so part of the path to sustainable development is training a workforce of healthcare workers, of educators, and of social support workers. The caregiving economy will be the center of human activity. This is where we specialize, is in taking care of each other in the future. And so preparing for caregiving jobs is also part of the path to sustainable development. We need more than ever and can achieve universal access to public services. The United States, sad to say, is the only high-income country without guaranteed access to healthcare. We are the only high-income country where we have subjected a young population to $1.7 trillion of student debt. Oh my God, why do we do this? When other societies understand that public financing of education is the key to the combination of knowledge and inclusion. And of course, we need universal access to infrastructure. We've arrived faster than we imagined in the digital age. COVID-19 pushed us there relentlessly during the past year, but we still have large communities that do not have access to adequate digital broadband. And we do need we do want and will benefit enormously from the coming generation of 5G broadband, which can empower all sectors of the economy. So these services need to be seen as universal, available to everybody in the United States by virtue of being a resident in our country. We need new forms of worker protection as our labor market continues to shift. Decent wages for all, leisure time for all. America's the only country without guaranteed paid family leave among all of the high-income countries in the world. We're the only country without guaranteed paid sick leave of all of the high-income countries in the world. We need social protection so that when a person loses a job, as will happen in a dynamic society and a dynamic economy, they don't lose their lives, they don't lose their livelihoods, they don't lose their homes, they don't lose their families. We need the social protection that enables that. And of course, the final part of the path to sustainable development is green technologies. And most importantly of all, we need to move within the next 30 years to a zero carbon energy system, tapping our vast wind, solar, nuclear, and other zero carbon sources of primary energy. America, as you know, as we know, is blessed. It's blessed with so many resources. It was blessed with fossil fuels during the fossil fuel age, but fortunately, it's completely blessed with zero carbon renewable energy sources as well. Taking this together offers us a holistic path forward. And we know we need to start moving more deliberately in this direction. The labor market shifts in our society are profound. We experienced within the last 70 years, from 1950 to today, a complete transformation of the labor force, of the workforce, of the occupational mix. The blue line here is the rising proportion of management and professional jobs needing advanced education. The declining beige line is the share of workers in the production spheres, on the assembly lines, on construction sites, in agriculture, and in mining. This has opened up a huge divide in American society between those with a higher education and those with not. But that trend is going to continue, and we need to face it, ensuring that more young people are able to get the skilled education that they need, and enabling society to hold together as these technological forces continue to create an upheaval in the labor market. It is no good waiting for production sector jobs to reappear. They will never reappear in the numbers of the past, because technology has already shifted the nature of work and employment in new directions. This is certainly true in North Carolina, where goods producing industries after 2007 experienced a prolonged loss of net jobs, whereas service providing industries have soared. So North Carolina is, of course, absolutely experiencing this trend. And another trend that economists have focused on, of course, is that the jobs are being created in non-routine cognitive and manual areas of work, because those are the areas that the machines don't function. But in the routine manual and cognitive work, the jobs are declining. And this, again, is a picture shown from 1990 to 2018 in North Carolina. This is a global pattern, not only a state or national pattern. All of this also has shifted where the jobs are created. Though it's possible that the digital age will partly offset this, it has been the large metro areas especially with the major university centers, with the startup businesses, with the service economies that have tended to experience most growth. It has been the non-metro areas, the rural areas and the suburbs that have been left behind, where jobs have been lost, where populations have declined, and where a lot of unhappiness and hurt has developed, exacerbating our political divisions in the country. One of the telltale signs of where new jobs are being created is where innovation is taking place. And this is to a significant extent university-based or university business partnership-based. And the strongest patenting activities in the United States are in the US Northeast and in the Pacific Coast. And this is where a lot of the new digital industries have developed. Fortunately, North Carolina also has a strong innovation tradition, the Research Triangle, of course, and a strong university base to be an active part of the kind of digital and green revolution and innovation that we're going to need in the future. We map in SDSN the performance of metropolitan areas regarding the SDGs, and it won't surprise you to know that the city regions that are closest to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals are the ones that have the strong education and technology base. So the countries, the metropolitan areas in the lead right now are Silicon Valley or the university centers, Madison, Wisconsin, or in Massachusetts, and Raleigh, North Carolina, in our 150 city ranking when we did this in 2019, ranked 10th in the United States because of its strong and innovative knowledge-based economy. So here is part of the crux of the matter. In a world where technology is creating such disruption and such change, where we're moving to a knowledge-based economy, a care-giving economy, and a green economy, and where traditional jobs are in decline, of course, we need active government to provide and ensure social protection, social inclusion, training, education, and public support for social services. And this is where the United States really fell down, unfortunately. We fell down because our society became deeply divided along racial lines, along class lines, religious lines, ideological lines, especially in the watershed period after the 1960s. We had the growing national social consensus, I would say, from the New Deal through the 1960s, but the upheavals of the civil rights movement, the women's rights movement, sexual and reproductive rights, divided society by class, by race, by attitude, by tradition, by religion, by region. And the United States ceased to operate as a unified nation with active public policies and budget outlays addressing the tensions and the shifts brought about by the new technologies. This, I feel, is the defining aspect of America's growing inequalities and polarization from the 1960s onward. Rather than seeing, unfortunately, the civil rights decade as the opportunity for truly unifying society, it became yet the next point of profound division in American politics for the following 40 years. And one of the consequences of that is rather striking. In the other high-income countries in the world, our counterparts in Europe and Canada tax revenues as a share of national income rose quite significantly after 1965, often by 5 to 10 to 15 percentage points of GDP. Why do I emphasize this? Because our peer countries noted that as the knowledge economy was taking shape, people were being left behind, that more government was needed in order to provide more social protection, to ensure more access to healthcare, to ensure more access to higher education, to ensure more access to family support. This would have been the natural implication of a rising economy, a growing, more productive economy, but one with more inequality. And that's what countries in other parts of the world did. They raised taxes. In the United States, unfortunately, we went into a social division that I think reflected the breakdown of national consensus in the civil rights movement and afterwards, where there was a strong feeling in uh, some parts of the country, we don't want to pay more taxes. We don't want to pay more taxes for an inclusive society. And the United States, which you can see as the red dot on this graph in the left-hand corner, only one country cut taxes, that's Ireland. They decided to be a tax haven to attract the mobile industry. The United States basically left our federal taxes as a share of GDP unchanged, whereas the other countries raised tax revenues. Now, to my mind, this was the moment after 1965 when the United States basically said, we are now on a trajectory of getting richer, but not staying inclusive, not remaining on a trajectory of more equality, and certainly, unfortunately, not in a trajectory of environmental sustainability as well. So I think we departed company from many of our peer countries in the 1970s, when, for the reasons of our culture wars and our social divisions, our politics became dominated by tax cutting, by attacks on the federal government when more federal government was needed, given the tumult and the disruptions that modern technology was bringing. And we have gone through an era of nearly 40 years now of of tax cutting, of resistance to federal spending, and of political division in the country. I believe that maybe we are now on the cusp of a new era, and that the passage of the $1.9 trillion legislation recently and today, President Biden is unveiling new proposals on green and digital infrastructure, could be the kind of breakthrough. But of course, I note as well that the recent legislation was passed on a straight party line, 50-50, exemplifying not overcoming the divisions of the past. But I do believe that we need more government and more revenues to ensure that the technological advances are accompanied by social inclusion and by the generation of green technologies. So the result of this federal inactivity, I would say, or paralysis or polarization, has been extremely high and rising inequality in our country and falling happiness. Our inequality, measured by the traditional Gini coefficient, is the highest among our peer nations. In the OECD, we only have higher inequality in Bulgaria, Chile, and Costa Rica among all of the OECD countries. The low-income inequality countries are Norway, Denmark, Finland, Sweden, and other countries of Europe. And each year, I am co-editor of a happiness report that the SDSN produces, the World Happiness Report using Gallup data collected annually around the world. And the United States has shown declining happiness reported, I think, related to the rising inequality and the lack of adequate public policies to address a time in turmoil. Which countries report the highest levels of happiness? Finland, Denmark, Switzerland, Iceland, Netherlands, Norway. Those countries embarked on rising public spending in the last 40 years, rising tax revenues in the last 40 years, because they knew that sustainable development required both market forces, definitely, but also public policies to enable and ensure social inclusion. So that's the case, I believe, for new activist government that is green, digital, skill-based, and caregiving. And I hope that for all four of those categories, ASU's role shines brightly, because a great university has the possibility, the skills, the opportunity to promote sustainability, as Walker College is doing, to promote the new digital economy, to help give birth to new startup companies, obviously the skill-based economy with advanced training and education, and the caregiving economy, because our great universities are the training grounds for healthcare workers, for teachers, for social workers, and for other critical caregivers in our society. Let me conclude with a word about the coming energy transition, because we are on the day that President Biden is unveiling proposals for the United States to move to a net zero emission society. We need to act. We need to act because we are on the path of increasing damage and danger. And North Carolina, unfortunately, is no stranger to this. It's the second most bombarded state by Caribbean hurricanes in the recent decades. And these are coming with increasing intensity and increasing severity of the Category 5 storms, and remarkably ferocious damages. Now, there's good news. The potential to move to a climate-safe energy system is abundantly clear. Yesterday, President Biden talked about massive commitments to new offshore wind power. Well, this is another area where North Carolina absolutely will excel, because the wind power is exceptionally strong and available for massive deployment in a wind power system. And that's true up in New York State, and President Biden talked about 30 gigawatts of new offshore wind and carrying all along the Atlantic seaboard. Of course, we have wind capacity in many parts of the country. The Midwest, the prairie states and the plain states are blessed with massive wind power. So if they're not producing coal and gas, they're going to be able to offset that with massive amounts of wind in the Dakotas, in Nebraska, and in Oklahoma, in Texas, which has become a center of wind power at global scale. We also, of course, and again, you live in a sunny part of the country, and we have tremendous photovoltaic potential as well. Even New York and North has a lot of solar potential, but North Carolina, and especially the US Southwest, is blessed with the remarkable solar potential. As SDSN has the strength of a nationwide consortium with our SDSN USA and a global consortium, we're engaged all over the world with trying to think through the practical transition pathways to that net zero economy. And we came out earlier this year with a zero carbon action plan available online, which shows that the United States has the ample renewable energy resources to move to a zero carbon economy by mid-century. The proposals, this is one scenario for primary energy showing a massive increase of offshore and onshore wind, of solar PV, and of the continuing nuclear fleet and other zero carbon energy sources. The idea was to map on a year-by-year basis a trajectory to mid-century. And the conclusion is that this can be accomplished at low cost and tremendous benefits in climate safety, especially when combined with the efforts around the world. Finally, let me remind us and thank you, Appalachian State University, for being one of those points on the map, that we have a global network to work and solving these problems together. I want to give special thanks also to Professor Rajat Panwar, one of your great faculty members, who is such a wonderful partner and active in the development of cross-disciplinary teaching and SDSN engagement. And I'm really thankful, Rajat, for all of your fantastic efforts and frequent wonderful suggestions. But let's use this global network so that we can reach out around the world for the kind of cooperation and inclusion that we need at a global scale. Friends, thank you so much. We have been a divided society for decades, but I believe we are learning the need for coming together. Division is not serving us. The market alone will not serve us. It will create wealth, but in Mr. Bezos's hands, it will not create wealth that is broadly shared across society. For that, we need to work together. We need to understand that sustainable development can be a shared framework of action for our country. We need to recognize how blessed we are with the natural and the human resources, the technologies, the science, and the great institutions like yours that will enable us to achieve our goals. Thank you so much for letting me be with you, and thank you again for this wonderful award that you have bestowed on me today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sachs, for such an interesting and inspiring talk and a hopeful talk. For everyone attending, my name is Dave McAvoy. I'm the chair of the economics department at Appalachian. And prior to today's event, we invited students and faculty members to submit questions for Professor Sachs. We have a little time, so hopefully we can get to a few of them. So Dr. Sachs, if you're ready.
I'm ready.
Here's the first
and I'm sure they're going to be tough ones.
And you alluded to this, especially with the zero carbon initiative. But the question is, now that the U.S. has entered the Paris Agreement or re-entered the Paris Agreement, what do you think are the country's top priorities to manage climate change?
We have two. One is to get our own act together, and the second is diplomatically to ensure that that occurs all over the world. The United States contributes now about 14 or 15% of global emissions. That's a big share for one country, especially we're 4% of the world's population. So we do our disproportionate contribution. We can't solve this problem alone, but the world will not solve it unless we're out there helping to lead not only by our own decarbonization, but also helping to lead with American technology and know-how. So on our side, we need a plan. This is just too complicated to sort out by market forces alone. Even if one did have a carbon tax or a carbon price, we have major land use issues. We have major issues of creating a national transmission grid. We have major issues about technology, how much nuclear, how much land to devote to alternative uses, how much hydro, so many challenges that we need really a political understanding of this and a technical understanding of this alongside the market forces. I think that President Biden will and should put forward a schema of how this country can get to zero by 2050. But a lot of that, in my view, should be left to the states and the cities. Each state should have a net zero energy strategy for the utility sector, and each state should be encouraged, in fact, required to work towards that. We'll have some common national standards. I think we're all going to be riding in electric vehicles in the future. I don't think, I won't say driving, because probably they're going to be driving us rather than us driving them, but it will be a common standard. But a lot will take place at the state level. Then at the international level, we need diplomacy. China accounts for about 28% of global emissions. We need China to do its part. And that requires a lot of cooperation and a lot of work together with China, with the European Union, and with other parts of the world. Time is short because we lost a lot of time on this. We still have politicians who are deniers on this in this country, which is not a real scientific kind of denial. It's somehow seen as a political advantage, but it makes no sense. Some of the biggest deniers, like Governor Abbott in Texas, just to name one, is a state that is bombarded by climate shocks. And so I just want our politicians to open their eyes and take care of the people of their states.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Let's get to the next question. This one was submitted by Dr. Howard Neufeld in our biology department. And here's the question. The recent Princeton report on switching from fossil fuels to solar and wind states that to complete this endeavor would require roughly 10% of the land area in the United States. How can we achieve carbon neutrality if that much land is required? And how to do that equitably among all the states?
Yeah, it's a great question. The integration of land strategy in the renewable energy strategy is a big issue, because if we say, well, we're going to wind and solar, and then every community has a fight about this, we're not going to make it in time also. How much land is required, of course, depends on many parameters. If it's a lot of offshore wind, like the 30 gigawatts in the Northeast, that's not land, fortunately, but it is clean, green energy. So to the extent that we're tapping offshore wind, this is a good thing. To the extent that we're tapping Canadian hydropower, I went up to northern Quebec, fascinating visual site, because it's the ancient glaciated site, so it's thousands of little lakes, but massive hydro potential that the Canadians are eager to sell to us, and that can be brought down on high voltage direct current lines. Nuclear should most likely will remain part of the fleet. And with the new generation nuclear, that of course is not heavy land concentration. Renewable energy needs to be combined with energy efficiency. This is a major part of any realistic scenario to getting to zero. And we have tremendous, tremendous potential gains in energy efficiency, in transport, in the building sector, in the industrial sector. So I'm a bit more optimistic than any single scenario, but I do think that this is a point that it really needs any kind of serious work. And I've seen scenarios that seem quite plausible in terms of land use, but you have to combine all of these features of finding the places, tapping the deserts, for example, long distance power transmission, tapping the sustainable hydro sites, tapping the offshore wind, and so on. That plus energy efficiency enables us to get this done, I think.
Great. Yeah, we have some more time, so let's get to another question. And this one you did allude to many times in talking about healthcare and education. But I'll ask it anyway, and maybe you want to elaborate a little bit more. But economists often like to rely on markets to manage resources, where you started your talk today saying just that. But are there sectors of the economy that you would think would benefit from less market transactions and more governmental control?
You know, it's interesting. I've worked all over the world in my career, and the United States is probably the most market-oriented society in the world, ideologically, politically, and in perhaps in application. We believe in business and in markets. We were raised in the Protestant ethic, and we were raised in British style laissez-faire economics. And so the primacy of the market in the US played a big ideological role. So too, I believe, historically did the racial divisions, because in the United States, because of race divisions that have been so deep in our society for hundreds of years, there has been resistance to the role of government, especially after the civil rights movement. Well, not especially, but including after the civil rights movement, because especially whites who did not want Black empowerment or African American empowerment resisted the role of the federal government. And that was definitely part of our politics from the earliest days of the Republic. So we took a different turn politically also because of the social differences in the United States, the race divide in the United States, the history also of probably much less social cohesion in general with the different religions as well, and so forth. All of that meant that in the US, the market became our default. Let the market do it. And the problem with letting the market do it is that the market does it quite well if you're well-to-do. The market's great. It can provide anything for you. But if you're poor, you are absolutely left out. And if you're very poor, you are desperate or dying because of market forces. And so almost all high-income societies, and much more than in the United States, have said, we want a mixed economy. A good measure of that is the share of taxes in GDP, which I showed you earlier. In Europe, Europeans pay typically 40 to 50% of national income in taxes. The United States, about 30%. The gap is about 15 percentage points of GDP, which in the US, by the way, is $3 trillion a year difference of spending. No, sorry. Yes, that's that. No, I've got that wrong. Sorry. If it's yeah, 15% of 20 trillion. So that is indeed $3 trillion a year difference of annual spending. And the difference is that in Europe, that's what pays for free healthcare for on site. That's what pays for tuition. That's what pays for family support. That's what pays for job retraining. I believe in that. I think we just would have a happier society, less tension, less stress, less desperation, fairer. And by the way, we would still be super prosperous, and we'd still have enough to go around, more than to go around, enough to spur entrepreneurship, those so-called animal spirits that apparently get Mr. Bezos up in the morning and getting Amazon, doing what it's doing. But he has $180 billion of wealth today. That's enough, it's more than enough. So we ought to be taxing more, and we ought to be sharing more. And I think we'd be a lot happier, but still very productive. And that would be my answer.
Very good. So I have another question that kind of builds off what you were talking about, what you started talking about with Pareto improvements, and to remind everyone, that's something that everybody's either a winner or nobody's made worse off, at least. And so I just wanted to get some thoughts on, given our current political divide and these lofty goals, whether it's social justice, environment, prosperity, all these overarching goals. Why are you so hopeful about these Pareto improvements with this kind of political divide?
I'll tell you one of my favorite projects, and I'd love to see the same thing at ASU and your neighboring institutions. There's a wonderful project that the mayor of Pittsburgh has launched, Bill Peduto. They call it a Marshall Plan for Middle America, like the Marshall Plan that helped rebuild Europe after World War II. But Mayor Peduto's idea is that, look, in this new green digital economy, Pittsburgh, which used to be the center of heavy industry, can play a dramatic role in building the new green digital economy. There's UPitt, there is Carnegie Mellon University, there's a lot of high tech around. There's a lot of capacity to build the underlying infrastructure for the new economy. So he got together with mayors in Upper Appalachia, Morgantown, Cincinnati, Louisville, 8 mayors of Upper Appalachia. And they put together a plan that said, look, we want to be leaders in this new economy, and here's what we could do. And in Ohio, they talked about being a key part of the new electric vehicle supply chain and key part of the battery-led economy or electric vehicle battery supply chains. Pittsburgh has advanced robotics and artificial intelligence and so forth. And each of these 8 cities look to its local universities as partners. So it's cities getting together with universities saying, we're going to play in the high-tech new economy and develop our region, not with the polluting fracking, not with the cracking plants to produce more polluting plastics and so forth, but in the new economy. And I think that this is what every region should do. What North Carolina could look at, okay, here's where we fit in fantastically into the new economy. Here are our strengths, and there are so many of them. Here are research strengths, technology strengths, strengths in the new growing sectors. Here's what we want from the federal government, by the way. Here's the infrastructure we need. Here's the new investments we want. Here's how we want to make sure that we have an industrial policy that is putting people of our region to work. And I think we need to do this to say, okay, this is the direction we want to go. How do we make it Pareto improving? How do we get win-win? How do we make sure that North Carolina is not left behind, or Oklahoma's not left behind, or Wyoming, which produces a lot of coal, is not left behind? And that, to my mind, has a lot to do with active investments in infrastructure, in technology, in new job creation. So taking an active position, not saying the market will sort it out. The market might sort it out, but leave half the country behind. But I want to bring all the country together into this.
Very good. Excellent. I want to thank you again, Professor Sachs, for taking the time to address these questions and for sharing your vision with us today. We're coming to the end of the hour, so we sincerely hope that you will be able to visit us in person on campus sometime in the future. Thank you, students, faculty, and community members, for joining us today. As we end our time together, let us go out and move forward, continuing to work toward the betterment of our region, our nation, and our planet. Thank you.
Dave, thank you so much. Thanks to everybody. I'm so grateful, and I am coming soon. My wife and I really want to visit soon, so we'll be there.
It's a beautiful place. We're happy to have you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.